Imagine standing before the most powerful men in the world and choosing God above all else. Imagine your faith becoming a crime punishable by death. Would you have the courage to continue praying? Today you will learn the story of Daniel, the man who refused to bow down before the powerful, a young man who was torn from his land, taken prisoner to the heart of the most feared empire in history, Babylon. But what the conquerors didn't know was that they were facing someone whose faith was stronger than any throne. Daniel confronted kings. He interpreted impossible dreams. He defied decrees. And when the whole world demanded that he bow down, he simply opened the windows and prayed. His reward, a den full of hungry lions. But there, in total darkness, one of the most impressive miracles in the Bible took place. A miracle that would change the heart of a king and echo for generations. This is a biblical story of courage, unwavering faith, and the price of obedience. And if you think you already know this story, wait until the end. Because there is a powerful revelation about the prophet Daniel that will transform the way you see your own journey of faith. Get ready, because the story of the man who faced the lions is only just beginning. Jerusalem was ablaze. The walls had fallen. The temple had been looted. And amidst the ashes of a destroyed nation, young Israelites were torn from their families and dragged away as prisoners of war. Among them was a teenager named Daniel. His destination? Babylon, the heart of the most powerful empire on earth. Babylon was not just a city. It was a symbol of human glory, boundless wealth, and absolute power. Its hanging gardens defied gravity. Its ziggurats touched the sky. But for Daniel and the other young Hebrews, it was a gilded prison. They were not there to admire the grandeur. They were there to serve. King Nebuchadnezzar had a plan. He wanted to mold those young men in the image of Babylon, to teach them the language, the culture, the religion, to erase their identities, to transform them into loyal Babylonians. It was a strategy of conquest, not just of territories, but of souls. Daniel lost his land, he lost his freedom, he even lost his name. He was renamed Belteshazzar in honor of pagan gods. But there was something that Nebuchadnezzar's armies could not steal: his faith. Because the real battle would not take place on the battlefields. It would take place in the heart of a young man who refused to forget who he was. And there, in the exile of the Hebrews, began the story of one of the greatest heroes of faith. Because sometimes God allows us to be taken to impossible places to prove that He is present anywhere. In the royal palace, Daniel and his friends were presented with a banquet. Not just any banquet. The table was laden with the finest delicacies of the kingdom, meats prepared by the best cooks, rare wines, dishes that most people would never taste. It was the king's food, and it was being offered to them. But there was a problem. That food had been consecrated to idols. Eating it meant participating in a pagan ritual. It meant accepting not only the king's hospitality, but his religion. To survive, most would have simply eaten it. After all, they were prisoners. Who would judge them for adapting? Daniel stopped in front of the table. The hall was immense, filled with golden columns that reflected the light of thousands of lamps. The aroma of the food was irresistible. Around him, other young people were already eating, laughing, enjoying themselves. But Daniel felt something different in his chest. Not hunger, but conviction. He knew that this moment would define everything. If he gave in now, he would give in forever. Then he did something unexpected. He refused. He asked the chief official to give him only vegetables and water. The man was terrified. "If you become weaker than the other young men, the king will kill me," he said. But Daniel proposed a test. 10 days, only vegetables and water, then compare our appearance with that of the others. 10 days later, Daniel and his friends were healthier, stronger, and more vibrant than anyone else. God honored their faithfulness, and there began a lesson that would span millennia. When your faith is tested, true strength comes not from what you accept, but from what you refuse to betray. But Babylon had seen nothing yet. For soon the king would have a dream, and Daniel would be the only person in the world capable of revealing its meaning. Nebuchadnezzar woke up sweating. His heart was pounding. He had dreamed of something terrifying, a vision so powerful that his spirit was disturbed. But upon waking, he couldn't remember the details, only the feeling that it was important, very important. He summoned all the magicians, enchanters, and wise men of Babylon. "Tell me the dream and its interpretation," he ordered. The wise men replied, "O king, tell us the dream and we will interpret it." But Nebuchadnezzar roared, "If you are so wise, reveal the dream to me. If you cannot, you will all be executed." It was a death sentence, and Daniel was among the condemned. When the soldiers came to take him away, he didn't panic. Instead, he asked the king for time, and that night Daniel did something that would change his life forever. He prayed. He and his friends cried out to the living God, not to the golden idols of Babylon, not to the stars or the spirits, but to the God who sees the invisible and knows the future. And during the night, in a vision, God revealed to Daniel both the dream and its meaning. The next morning, Daniel was brought before the king. "Is there anyone who can reveal this mystery?" Nebuchadnezzar asked. Daniel replied, "No wise man, enchanter, or magician can do it. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has shown you what will happen in the future." Daniel described the dream: an enormous statue with a head of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of iron mixed with clay. Then a stone, not cut by human hands, struck the statue at its feet, and it all collapsed. The stone grew until it became a mountain that filled the whole earth. The king was paralyzed. It was exactly what he had dreamed. "What does this mean?" he asked. Daniel explained, "You are the head of gold, but after you will come other kingdoms, each weaker than the last. And in the end, the God of heaven will establish a kingdom that will never be destroyed." Nebuchadnezzar fell to his knees. "Truly, your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings," he declared. Daniel was exalted, from prisoner to advisor to the king. But the interpretation of biblical dreams was not the end of Daniel's story. It was only the beginning, because power reveals who we are. And soon Nebuchadnezzar himself would discover that no human throne is above the throne of God. Daniel was now one of the most influential men in Babylon. He had direct access to the king. He oversaw entire provinces. But while Daniel remained faithful to God, something dangerous began to take place in Nebuchadnezzar's heart: pride. The king looked at his city and saw his own greatness reflected in every brick. He forgot that God had called him head of gold, not by his own merit, but by divine design. And one day, walking on the terrace of his palace, Nebuchadnezzar declared, "Is not this the great Babylon that I have built as a royal residence, by my power and for the glory of my majesty?" Before the words had fully left his mouth, a voice came from heaven. "Your authority has been taken from you." In that very instant, the king's mind went blank. He was driven from the palace and began to live like an animal, eating grass soaked in dew, with hair growing like eagle feathers and nails like bird claws. 7 years. That was how long Nebuchadnezzar lived in that state, until finally he lifted his eyes to heaven and his reason returned. He recognized that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men and gives them to whomever he wills. And then, restored, he did something amazing. He publicly praised the God of Daniel. And since we're talking about stories that transform empires, if this story is touching you, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more biblical stories of courage and faith that strengthen your journey. This helps us continue bringing these teachings to you. Daniel witnessed all of this. He saw the most powerful king in the world humbled by God and then restored by grace. But this lesson would not be learned by everyone, because years later, under a new king, Daniel's faithfulness would be tested in a way he never imagined. And this time, it wouldn't be the pride of a king that would put him in danger. It would be the envy of those who couldn't bear to see a just man prosper. Years passed. Nebuchadnezzar died, and now Daniel served under a new emperor, Darius the Mede. Babylon had fallen to the Medo-Persian Empire, but Daniel remained indispensable. His wisdom, integrity, and efficiency were so evident that the king planned to appoint him governor over the entire kingdom. But this created a problem, because in palaces, integrity is seen as a threat. There were princes and satraps who prospered through corruption, bribery, and manipulation, and there was Daniel, incorruptible, faithful, blameless. His very existence exposed them, so they gathered in the shadows. "We need to find something against Daniel," they said. They scrutinized his administration. They looked for errors, irregularities, any slip-up, but they found nothing. Daniel was impeccable, until one of them had a sinister idea. "We won't find any accusation against him unless it's something related to the law of his God." There was the loophole. Daniel prayed 3 times a day with the windows open, facing Jerusalem. Everyone knew this. He did not hide his faith. Then the conspirators went to King Darius with a proposal. "O king, let a decree be issued that anyone who in the next 30 days prays to any god or man except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den." It was a perfect trap. Darius, flattered and unaware of the plan, signed the decree. And according to the law of the Medes and Persians, once signed, not even the king himself could revoke it. The price of obedience to God was now clear: death, and all eyes turned to Daniel. What would he do? Would he hide his faith to save his life, or would he continue being who he always was? Daniel had heard about the decree. He knew exactly what it meant. His enemies weren't targeting his position, they were targeting his soul. They wanted to force him to choose between God and survival, between faith and fear. The most logical decision would be to stop praying, or at least pray in secret, just for 30 days. After that, everything would return to normal. No one would judge him. After all, it was a matter of life or death. But Daniel was not guided by human logic. He was guided by faithfulness to God. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He went home, opened his bedroom windows, as he always did, knelt down facing Jerusalem and prayed 3 times a day, as always. He didn't hide. He didn't negotiate. He didn't adjust his faith to fit the demands of the world. The conspirators were lying in wait. As soon as they saw Daniel praying, they ran to the king. "O King Darius, did you not sign a decree?" they asked with feigned concern. Darius confirmed. Then they revealed, "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, does not listen to you, O king. He continues to pray to his God 3 times a day." The king was devastated. He had fallen into a trap. He loved Daniel. He knew he was innocent. He spent the entire day trying to find a way to save him, but the law was irrevocable. At dusk, the accusers returned. "Remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree can be revoked." Darius had no choice. With a broken heart, he gave the order. Daniel would be thrown into the lion's den. But before they sealed the entrance with a large stone, the king said something surprising. "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." The stone was sealed, and Daniel disappeared into the darkness, alone with the wild beasts, but not truly alone. Because remaining faithful to God, even when it costs everything, means discovering that He never abandons us, especially when the world abandons us. The den was cold, dark. The smell of wild animals filled the air. Daniel could hear the heavy breathing of the lions around him. They were creatures trained to kill, hungry, relentless. Any movement could be his last. But something extraordinary happened that night. While Daniel lay there in the heart of death, he did not cry out. He did not plead for mercy. He simply rested. Because unwavering faith does not mean the absence of fear. It means the presence of a trust so profound that even fear bows before it. And God did something that defied all the laws of nature. He sent an angel, and that angel shut the mouths of the lions. Creatures that tore flesh became docile as lambs. The roar was silenced. The claws did not touch Daniel. In that den, the miracle was not only physical, it was spiritual. Because God was proving something that the world needs to understand, he protects the faithful. Meanwhile, in the palace, King Darius could not eat. He could not sleep. He refused any entertainment. He spent the whole night in anguish, because he knew he had condemned an innocent man. And deep in his soul, he hoped, almost without believing, that the God of Daniel would do the impossible. When the first ray of sunlight broke the horizon, Darius leaped to his feet and ran to the den. The silence was oppressive. Was Daniel still alive, or had the lions already? The king couldn't finish his thought. He cried out, his voice choked with emotion. "Daniel, servant of the living God, could your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you from the lions?" For a moment, nothing, just silence. And then from the bottom of the grave a voice answered, "Firm, alive. O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. They did not harm me, because I was found innocent in his sight." The king burst with joy. Daniel was taken out of the den. There wasn't a scratch, not a mark. He was unharmed. And in that moment, everyone witnessed what happens when someone chooses not to bow down to the world. God shows that he is greater than any human power. The crowd gathered around the lion's den. No one could believe what they were seeing. Daniel was alive. The lions, beasts that could tear men apart in seconds, were calm, as if an invisible force had subdued them. The miracle in the lion's den was not just a story. It was a public testimony to the power of God. King Darius, still trembling with emotion, ordered that the men who had conspired against Daniel be brought in. And there, before everyone, justice was executed. The accusers, along with their families, were thrown into the same den. And before they reached the bottom, the lions tore them apart. It was a brutal but necessary demonstration. The same lions that hadn't touched Daniel tore his enemies apart in seconds. It wasn't luck, it wasn't coincidence, it was God. He had closed the mouths of the beasts to protect his servant, and now the whole world knew it. But Darius didn't stop there. He not only recognized the miracle, he proclaimed it. A decree was issued for the entire empire. "I decree that throughout my kingdom people tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion will never end. He delivers and rescues. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions." A pagan king declaring the supremacy of the living God. An entire empire ordered to worship him. All because one man refused to bow down, because Daniel understood something that many forget. When you don't compromise your faith, God negotiates your deliverance. And so, the prophet who faced the lions not only survived, he triumphed. His faithfulness became an eternal testament that God honors those who honor him. But Daniel's story doesn't end there, because the impact of his life went far beyond that night in the lion's den. Darius was never the same again. Before, he was a powerful king, but influenced by flatterers and intrigue. After witnessing the miracle, he became a king who feared the God of Daniel. And this changed not only his heart, it changed the way he ruled. Daniel was restored to his position. More than that, he prospered. His integrity had been tested in the fire and proven true. And now, entire nations heard about the servant of God whom the lions could not devour. The testimony of a faithful man reached millions. But the most profound aspect wasn't just the change in the king, it was the message sent through the ages. Because the story of Daniel isn't just about a man who survived, it's about a God who sustains. It's about the courage to remain faithful when everything around you screams for you to bow down. And that message resonated from Babylon to Persia, from antiquity to the present day. Whenever someone faces the choice between pleasing the powerful or obeying God, the story of Daniel in the lion's den returns as a reminder. Loyalty comes at a cost, but it also has a reward. Daniel learned that God doesn't promise the absence of trials. He promises his presence during trials. He doesn't promise you won't be thrown into the pit, but he promises that in the pit you won't be alone, and that the mouths that should destroy you will be silenced by his hand. The spiritual lessons in the book of Daniel are profound, but one shines above all. Your testimony can change nations, but only if you are willing not to compromise your faith. And as Daniel continued to serve faithfully, his story became immortal. Because empires fall, kings die, but the faith of a man who refused to bend, that remains forever. Daniel was already an old man. His hair was white. His body was marked by decades of service. But his eyes still shone with the same faith that had sustained him since his youth. He had crossed empires, served kings, survived conspiracies, and remained faithful. He saw Jerusalem fall. He saw Babylon dominate the world. He saw Persia conquer Babylon. He witnessed the rise and fall of rulers, and in each moment he made a choice: don't bend. When they offered him the king's food, he refused. When they demanded he stop praying, he prayed. When they threatened him with death, he chose God. And in each of these decisions, God honored him, not with ease, but with presence, not with the absence of trials, but with victory in the midst of them. Daniel became a bridge between generations. He inspired young Hebrews to remain faithful even in exile. He challenged kings to acknowledge the living God. He proved that the biblical story of the Old Testament is not just about battles and conquests. It's about the human heart before the sacred. But there was something more. Daniel didn't just live this faith, he documented it. The book of Daniel is one of the most powerful texts in Scripture. It contains prophetic visions about the future, revelations about kingdoms yet to come, and a message that transcends millennia. God is in control, even when it seems like chaos reigns. When Daniel finally closed his eyes for the last time, he departed knowing he had fulfilled his purpose. He did not conquer lands. He did not accumulate riches. But he did something far greater. He left a legacy of loyalty that no empire has been able to erase. And today, when you read about Daniel, you're not just learning about an old story. You're standing before a mirror, because the question he answered is the same one you face. When the world demands that you bow down, what will you choose? We live in a world that demands conformity, that punishes public faith, that rewards those who conform and chastises those who remain steadfast. In many ways, it's not so different from Babylon or Persia. The empires have changed names, but the pressure remains the same. Bend or suffer the consequences. Daniel teaches us that there is a third option: not to give in, and to trust that God is faithful. Not because he promises a life without difficulties, but because he promises to be present in times of difficulty. The den may come, but the angel will also come. The lions may roar, but God can shut them up. The story of Daniel in the Bible is not just about a physical miracle, it's about a spiritual miracle. Because the real miracle wasn't Daniel coming out of the den alive, it was him entering it without renouncing his faith. It was him choosing faithfulness, even without a guarantee of deliverance. It was him trusting in God, not because of what God would do, but because of who God is. And that message resonates even today. How many times have you felt the pressure to silence your faith, to hide who you are in order to fit in, to trade truth for acceptance? Daniel is shouting through the centuries, "Don't bow down," because in the end, empires fall. The powerful are forgotten, but those who remain faithful, they become heroes of faith, examples of courage that transcend generations, stories that strengthen the faith of millions. So let this story burn in your heart, because you may not face literal lions, but you will face pressures, challenges, moments when remaining faithful will cost you something. And in those moments, remember Daniel. Remember that God silences mouths. Remember that faithfulness always pays off. And the final revelation? Here it is. Daniel was not merely saved from the lions, he was saved for the lions. God allowed him to be thrown into the pit so that the whole world could witness his power. Sometimes God doesn't remove the trial. He uses it as a stage for his glory. So when your faith is tested, and it will be, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What for?" Because your faithfulness can be the testimony that changes a life, or a nation, or a generation. We have reached the end of the story of the man who refused to bend, but perhaps this is only the beginning of your story, because now you know the truth. You know it's possible to remain faithful, even when everything is against you. You know that God protects the faithful, not necessarily from trials, but always through them. Daniel left us more than an example of faith and courage. He left us a calling to live so faithfully that our testimony compels the world to recognize that there is a living God. A calling not to compromise our identity, even when it costs us dearly. A calling to trust that in the end, faithfulness always wins. So reflect. Where have you been tempted to give in? Where is your faith being tested? And most importantly, are you willing to open the windows and pray, even knowing there may be consequences? If this story touched your heart, I want to invite you to do something. Leave a comment below, sharing how Daniel's story impacted you. Is your faith being tested right now? Share it, because your testimony can strengthen someone who is going through the same struggle. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Here, you'll find more biblical stories of courage that will transform how you see your journey with God. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement, because Daniel's message needs to resonate. Remember, you were created to stand firm, not to bend. And God, who shut the mouths of lions for Daniel, can also shut the mouths that roar against you. Trust, remain faithful, and witness the miracle. Until the next video, may your faith remain unwavering. Not bowing down to the world is the greatest victory you can achieve.